stop, before you scroll past this, I need you to hear something. There is one morning, one single, quiet, unremarkable Thursday morning that completely dismantled everything I thought I knew about myself, about friendship, about love, and about the walls we build around our hearts to keep the truth out. I didn't plan for any of it. He didn't plan for any of it either. We were just two best friends caught in a snowstorm, sharing a bed in a tiny hotel room in the middle of nowhere. And by the time the sun came through those curtains the next morning, neither of us would ever be the same again. My name is Ethan, and this is the story I've never told anyone until now. If you've ever had a friendship that felt like more than a friendship, if you've ever bitten your tongue so hard it bled just to keep from saying something you couldn't take back, if you've ever been terrified that the truth would cost you the one person in the world you couldn't afford to lose, then stay with me, because this one is for you. Let me take you back, way back. I was 17 years old, brand new to Westfield High School in a town where I knew exactly 0 people. My family had moved from Chicago not because we wanted to, but because my dad lost his job and my mom's sister had a spare room and a spare car and a lot of grace. We packed everything we owned into a U-Haul the size of our living room and drove 12 hours through the flat, amber nothing of the Midwest, until we arrived in Clarksville, Ohio. Population 14,000. Starbucks count 0, teenagers who looked like me also roughly 0. I was black, bookish, obsessed with photography and old Motown records, and painfully, catastrophically introverted. I wore headphones like armor. I ate lunch with a book propped against my water bottle. I had mastered the art of being invisible. And then Ryan Calloway sat down across from me at the back of AP English, dropped his bag on the floor with a sound like a small explosion, looked directly at me and said, "Please tell me you've read that book before and can fill me in on what happens. I've been trying to get through chapter 3 for 2 weeks and I think it's actually killing me." He was pointing at the battered copy of The Great Gatsby in my hands. I stared at him, he stared back. He had this enormous, unguarded grin, the kind that takes up your whole face, the kind that doesn't ask permission, and messy brown hair that looked like he'd given up on it but also like it had turned out great anyway. He was wearing a hoodie from some camp I'd never heard of, and he smelled faintly like pine trees and laundry detergent. I said, "It's a tragedy about obsession and the impossibility of recapturing the past." He blinked, then he laughed this big, warm, genuine laugh and said, "Okay, I like you, I'm Ryan, and you just saved my GPA." That was it, that was the beginning. Within 2 weeks, Ryan Calloway had become the loudest, brightest, most unavoidable presence in my life. He was the kind of person who moved through the world like the world was happy he was in it, and somehow, impossibly, he decided that I was the person he most wanted to spend time with. He showed up at my locker every morning with 2 gas station coffees, one black for him, one with 3 sugars and oat milk for me, even though I'd only mentioned my coffee order once in passing 2 weeks before. He remembered. He always remembered. He texted me memes at 11 p.m. and called them required reading. He dragged me to every football game, every bonfire, every cramped house party where the music was too loud and the air smelled like cheap cologne, not because he wanted me to be social but because, as he put it, "I just genuinely cannot have a good time if you're not there. That's a you problem, or maybe a me problem, I haven't decided." He made me feel, for the first time in a very long time, like I was worth showing up for. And somewhere in those first few months, somewhere between the late-night drives and the terrible horror movies and the long conversations about everything and nothing, I realized something that turned my entire internal world sideways. I was falling in love with my best friend. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, "Ethan, you were 17. Teenagers fall for their best friends all the time. It's practically a rite of passage. You'll grow out of it." But I need you to understand something. This wasn't a crush. I know what a crush feels like. A crush is a flicker. It's warm and exciting and a little bit dizzy and then it fades. A crush lives on the surface. This was not that. What I felt for Ryan was quieter than a crush, deeper. It lived in my chest like something permanent, like it had moved in and redecorated and had no intention of leaving. It was in the way I noticed when he was tired before he'd said a word. The way I knew without being told when he was scared or sad or pretending to be fine. The way being in a room with him felt like the room itself was more real, more vivid, like the colors were brighter when he was around. It scared me. Because Ryan was, by every indication I had ever received, completely, irreversibly straight. He dated girls, he talked about girls. He had a girlfriend sophomore year, Maya, who was sweet and funny and laughed at all his jokes, and watching them together did something to me that I didn't have language for yet. I smiled through it. I was Ryan's best friend. I was happy for him. I said all the right things. And at night, alone in my room, I asked God or the universe or whoever was listening to please let these feelings dissolve. They didn't dissolve, they just got quieter. I learned to carry them more carefully. I learned to fold them small and tuck them somewhere they wouldn't show. And Ryan, wonderful, oblivious, golden Ryan, never knew a thing. Years passed. We graduated high school. We both ended up at state, different majors, same dorm building, as if the universe thought that was funny. Ryan studied sports management with the same chaotic energy he brought to everything. I studied journalism and spent my free time in the campus darkroom, developing film, making sense of the world through a lens. We were inseparable still, always. Our friends called us the twins. People who didn't know us sometimes assumed we were a couple. We always laughed it off. I laughed a little harder than I needed to, maybe. Ryan stayed Ryan, confident, magnetic, the person everyone wanted to be around. He dated a few more girls through college, none of them serious. He was the kind of guy who fell hard and fast and then slowly, gently moved on. He never spoke badly about anyone. He was incapable of cruelty. I stayed me, quieter, more careful, watching him from the corner of every room and knowing, with the deep certainty of someone who has lived with a truth for years, that I would love Ryan Calloway for the rest of my life. I had made peace with it. I thought I had made peace with it. And then came February of senior year, and the snowstorm, and the hotel room, and the morning that changed everything. It started as the most ordinary thing in the world. Ryan's grandmother, his Nana Bet, who he adored with a fierceness that made my heart ache every time he talked about her, turned 80 years old in February. Her birthday party was being held at her home in Harlow, a small town about 4 hours northeast of our university. The whole family was gathering. Ryan had been planning the drive for weeks. "Come with me," he said, 3 days before, leaning in the doorframe of my dorm room with both hands braced against the wood like he was holding the building up. I looked up from my laptop. What? The drive to Nana Bet's. Come with me. It's 4 hours each way. I cannot listen to podcasts for 8 hours alone, Ethan. I will lose my mind. I need you to be my co-pilot, my navigator, my keeper of the aux cord, and most importantly, the person who keeps me from eating gas station sushi at 2 a.m. You've never eaten gas station sushi. Exactly, because you've always been there to stop me, he pointed at me. Don't break the streak. I should have said no. I had a paper due Monday. The weather forecast was showing a winter storm warning for the weekend. I had a dozen reasonable, responsible reasons to stay in my warm dorm room and not climb into Ryan's ancient Jeep for an 8-hour round trip. Okay, I said. Because I never said no to Ryan. I think he knew that. I think he was careful never to take advantage of it. That was the thing about Ryan, he had a kind of awareness about him, a sensitivity that didn't always match the golden, easy image people had of him. He knew when he was asking a lot. He always made sure you knew he was grateful. Seriously, his face lit up. Don't make it weird. It's already weird, it's endearing, I love it. Pack a bag because we might stay over. Nana Bet always wants everyone to stay over. I packed a bag. We left Friday afternoon just after 3 p.m. with Ryan's Jeep loaded with birthday presents, a cooler of snacks I'd insisted on packing, and a playlist Ryan had spent an embarrassing amount of time curating. The drive was, and I want to be very careful with this word, perfect. I know that sounds too simple, but I need you to understand there were stretches of that drive where I forgot to be sad about what I couldn't have because what I did have was so completely enough. Ryan drove with one hand on the wheel and one hand keeping beat on his knee. He sang along to songs he didn't fully know, making up lyrics with total confidence. He made me read the names of small towns off the highway signs and we gave each one a backstory, the tragic soap opera of Millbrook, the secret underground jazz scene of Waverly Crossing, the generational feud that had divided the people of Piney Falls since 1987. We talked about after graduation, where we'd go, what we'd do. Ryan had an offer from a sports agency in Columbus. I had applied to 3 newspapers and a magazine and was waiting to hear. Whatever happens, Ryan said, somewhere around hour 2, his voice dropping into that quieter register he only used when he was being genuinely serious, we stay close, right? Like, that's not negotiable for me. I don't care where we both end up, we stay close. I looked at him. The sun was setting to our left, painting the sky in oranges and deep pinks. His profile was lit gold. He was watching the road, jaw set, brow slightly furrowed, like the statement mattered to him in a way he was trying not to make a production of. Right, I said. We stay close. He'd been saying versions of that for 4 years. We arrived in Harlow just after 7 p.m. Nana Bet's house was warm and loud and full of Callaways. Nana Bet herself was a tiny woman with enormous energy and Ryan's exact same grin, and when she saw him she cupped his face in both her hands and said, "There he is! There's my favorite." "Nana, I'm your only grandson. That's why you're my favorite." She turned to me, "And this is the famous Ethan. I've heard about you for 4 years. "Call me Nana," she said before I could respond. "Everyone who loves Ryan calls me Nana." I thought, well, that's going to be a complicated statement for me. The party was lovely, the food was extraordinary. Ryan's family was warm and they folded me in without ceremony, the way families who are good at loving people tend to do. At around 9 p.m., Ryan's dad pulled us both aside. "The weather's turned," he said. "There's a system moving in from the northwest. They're calling for 8 to 10 inches overnight and the county road back to the highway is going to be bad. We're all staying put. I've called ahead for you boys. There's a motel about 2 miles from here, the Harlow Inn, last room available. I booked it." Ryan looked at me, I looked at Ryan. "One room," his dad said in the tone of someone who has already solved this in his head and doesn't see the problem. "One room with a king bed. It's one night. You boys'll be fine. One room, one bed, one night." And I thought, this is fine. We've shared close quarters before, we've camped, we've crashed on each other's floors. This is absolutely, completely fine. I was so wrong. The Harlow Inn was the kind of motel that exists in a specific fold of American geography, somewhere between charming and tired, with a hand-painted sign and a lobby that smelled like carpet cleaner and old coffee. Room 7, end of the hall. King bed with a navy blue comforter, one window against which snow was already pressing itself in fat, determined flakes. Ryan dropped his bag by the door and immediately fell backward onto the bed like he was doing a trust fall. "I love this," he announced at the ceiling. "You love a mediocre motel room. I love any room that means we don't have to drive 4 hours in a blizzard tonight." He turned his head to look at me. "Come on, admit this is better than being in a ditch somewhere." Significantly, I agreed. I sat on the edge of the bed, my side as far over as geometry would allow, and looked around the room. There was a television mounted on a dresser, a small bathroom, a Bible in the nightstand drawer, and a takeout menu for a pizza place that, given the weather, was definitely not delivering tonight. We found a movie on TV, one of those action sequels that neither of us had seen the original of, so the entire viewing experience was us trying to piece together the mythology with zero context. Ryan kept a running commentary. I kept answering with responses that made even less sense. By the time the third explosion happened, we were both laughing so hard neither of us was actually watching anymore. At some point, midnight maybe or close to it, Ryan muted the TV. The room went quiet except for the sound of the storm outside, the soft rattle of the window, the low hum of the heating unit. Ryan turned on his side to face me. He had his arm tucked under his head. In the blue-gray light of the muted television, he looked younger somehow, unguarded. "Can I ask you something kind of weird?" he said. This was not unusual. Ryan regularly asked things prefaced with "kind of weird." Usually they were things like, "Do you think fish have emotions?" Or, "If you could only eat one food forever but it had to be something you currently dislike, what would you choose?" "Sure," I said. He was quiet for a second, choosing his words. "Do you ever feel like there's stuff you've been carrying for so long you don't even notice the weight anymore? Like it's just become part of you, part of how you move through the world, and you can't tell anymore if you're fine or if you've just gotten really good at pretending you're fine?" I was very, very still. "Yeah," I said, "I think about that sometimes." Ryan nodded slowly. He was looking at the ceiling now. "I think I've been doing that," he said, "for a while, carrying stuff." "What kind of stuff?" Long pause. Stuff about who I am, he said. Stuff I don't really know how to say out loud. Stuff that feels real but also feels like it can't be real because it doesn't match anything I thought I knew about myself. My heart was doing something loud and complicated in my chest. Ryan, I said carefully, you can tell me anything, you know that. I know, he said, that's why I'm almost telling you. He smiled at the ceiling, this small, complicated smile. I'm working up to it. Take your time. What if it changes things? It won't. You don't know what it is yet. Doesn't matter, I said. Whatever it is, it won't change anything between us. Nothing could. He turned his head to look at me again. In the dim light, his eyes were very dark, very direct. You always say the right thing, he said quietly. I just say what's true. He held my gaze for a moment that stretched, one of those moments that feels like it has its own gravity, like time is moving through something thicker than air. Then he looked back at the ceiling and let out a long, slow breath. Not tonight, he said. I'll tell you tomorrow. I think I need to sleep first. Okay, I said. Okay, he said. We turned the TV off. We lay in the dark. The snow kept pressing against the window. And I lay there in the dark next to my best friend, thinking about things I had no business thinking about, knowing I was not going to sleep for a very long time. I was right about that. For hours, I lay there in the careful stillness of someone pretending to be asleep. Ryan's breathing deepened and evened out. He slept the way he did everything, completely, without apparent conflict. I stared at the ceiling and I listened to the storm and I thought about the words he'd used. Stuff about who I am, stuff that feels real but doesn't match anything I thought I knew about myself. I told myself not to hope. I was very practiced at telling myself not to hope. The storm outside got louder, the room got colder despite the heater. Sometime in the deepest part of the night, 3 or 4 a.m., maybe, Ryan shifted in his sleep. He moved closer. The bed wasn't small exactly, but he was a person who moved when he slept, and somewhere in the dark he had drifted toward the center. His arm landed across my chest. I stopped breathing entirely. He didn't wake up, his breathing stayed slow and even. He was warm and solid and completely unaware of what he had done to me. I should have moved away. I should have carefully, gently extracted myself and retreated to my side. I didn't move. God help me, I didn't move. I lay there and I thought, this is fine. This is how people sleep. His arm is across my chest because he moved in his sleep, and I am lying here like a sensible adult who is not having a crisis, and in a few hours the sun will come up and this will be an unremarkable moment in the history of our friendship. I almost believed it. And then the morning came. I don't know when I finally fell asleep, but I know how I woke up. Slowly, warm, with the peculiar disorientation of waking up somewhere unfamiliar. The storm had stopped. Through the curtains, pale winter light was pressing in, soft and gray and still. The heating unit hummed. Somewhere outside, a car engine started up and then faded away into the quiet. I was on my side. Ryan was behind me. His arm was around my waist. His chin was resting gently, completely unconsciously against the back of my head. His breathing was slow against my neck. We had moved in the night into something that was very clearly, unmistakably an embrace. I lay very still. I thought, don't move, don't breathe too loud, don't ruin this. And then I thought, you have to move, this can't be, you're going to ruin everything if you let him wake up like this. He'll be embarrassed, he'll feel terrible, this is just how people sleep. It doesn't mean anything, move. I shifted the smallest, most careful movement, just enough to create an inch of space. Ryan stirred. His arm, instead of pulling back, tightened. Slightly, definitely. His arm tightened and he made a sound, the half-conscious, throaty sound of someone at the very edge of waking, and he said very quietly into the back of my neck. Don't. Just that word. Don't. I froze. A few seconds passed, long, crystalline seconds where the whole world held its breath with me. And then Ryan went still. And I could feel the exact moment he woke up, the way his breathing changed, sharpened, became deliberate. The way his body went from loose and asleep to fully, quietly aware. He didn't move away. I don't know how long we lay there in that impossible silence. It might have been 30 seconds, it might have been 5 minutes. Time was doing something strange. And then Ryan said, in a voice that was very quiet and very careful. "Ethan." "Yeah." "Are you awake?" "Yeah." Pause. "Okay," he said. He still didn't move. My heart was in my throat. My whole body felt like the air before a thunderstorm, electric, charged, waiting for something to break. "Ryan," I said, my voice came out steadier than I had any right to expect. "Yeah." "What did you want to tell me last night?" The silence that followed was the loudest thing I have ever heard in my life. His arms slowly, deliberately, tightened a fraction more. And then he exhaled one long, shuddering breath, and in a voice I had never heard from him before, quiet and broken open and absolutely raw, he said, "I think I'm in love with you. I think I've been in love with you for a really long time, and I don't know what that means, and I'm terrified, and I'm sorry, and please don't." I turned over. He stopped talking. We were face to face. His eyes were wide, terrified. This was not a side of Ryan Calloway I had seen before, not this nakedness, not this sheer, unguarded fear. He looked like someone who had just set down a weight so enormous he was dizzy from the release of it. I looked at him. And then I said the thing I had been carrying for 4 years, the thing I had folded small and hidden and told myself was impossible, the thing that had lived in my chest like a quiet, permanent fire. "Ryan, I have been in love with you since we were 17 years old." His face did something extraordinary. It didn't smile, not at first. It crumpled briefly the way faces do when the emotion is simply too large for the container. His eyes went bright. He pressed his lips together and looked at the ceiling for a moment and then looked back at me. "4 years," he said. 4 years. Why didn't you? Why didn't you?" We stared at each other. And then we both laughed, these helpless, disbelieving, overwhelmed laughs, the kind of laughter that is made of equal parts joy and the dawning horror of all the time that could have been different, all the mornings and late nights and long drives that could have been something else. "4 years," Ryan said again. He said it like he was still trying to get his mind around it, like the number felt both too large and somehow not large enough to contain everything we had quietly carried. "You had a girlfriend," I said. "Multiple you were." "I was confused," he said. I thought this was something that would go away. I thought it was just you, the specific weird magic of you, and that I could just not." He stopped, shook his head. "I could not." "Ryan, I could not love you, Ethan. I tried, I'm sorry, I tried." "Don't apologize," I said. "Please don't apologize for this." He looked at me for a long moment. The morning light was turning gold through the curtains now. The room was very quiet. Outside, somewhere, someone was shoveling snow, the rhythmic scrape of a shovel on pavement, and it was the most ordinary sound in the world, and yet I knew I would remember it for the rest of my life. "What do we do?" he asked. "I don't know," I said. "What do you want to do?" He reached out, very slowly, very deliberately, giving me every opportunity to pull back, every exit, every out. He put his hand against my face. "I want," he said, "to stop pretending I don't feel this." I didn't pull back. And that was the answer. That was the morning that changed everything. Here is what no one tells you about the moment you get the thing you've wanted for years. It is not simple. It is not the end of the story. In a lot of ways, it is the beginning of the hardest part. We drove home that morning through roads that were being slowly cleared, the world outside white and quiet and new. We barely spoke. Not because things were bad, they weren't bad. They were just enormous. We were both processing something that had shifted the tectonic plates of our entire friendship, our entire sense of ourselves and each other, and sometimes enormity requires quiet. At some point, on a long stretch of highway with the sun coming through the windshield at a low winter angle, Ryan reached across the center console and put his hand over mine where it was resting on my knee. He didn't look at me, I didn't look at him, he just left his hand there. And we drove home like that. The weeks that followed were not a movie montage. I want to be honest with you about that. I want to be honest with you because I think the stories we tell about love, especially love that looks like ours, tend to skip the hard parts. They go, and then everything was beautiful. When in reality, everything was beautiful and terrifying and confusing and full of conversations we barely knew how to have. Ryan's internal reckoning with who he was took time. That is the truth of it. He was 21 years old, he had spent his entire life with a certain understanding of himself, and the floor of that understanding had just given way. He needed space to process that, to sit with it, to examine it, to figure out what it meant for his sense of identity and his relationships with his family and the world. I gave him that space. Not without aching, not without the particular specific anxiety of someone who has been on the edge of something good and is now waiting to see if it holds. But I gave it to him because he would have given me the same, and because love that demands someone move faster than they're ready to move isn't love, it's hunger dressed up in love's clothes. He talked to me, constantly. Late-night phone calls where he'd work through things out loud and I'd listen, and sometimes I'd say something useful and sometimes I'd just say, "I know and I'm here and take your time." He saw a therapist, a person he'd actually been seeing for anxiety since junior year, who now became the person he worked through his emerging understanding of his sexuality with. He told me this with the slight embarrassment of someone admitting they'd needed help, and I told him that was possibly the most mature thing he'd ever done, which made him laugh. His therapist, he told me later, asked him, "What are you afraid of?" And Ryan had said, "Losing him." And she had said, "But what if you can't have him and keep him? What if this changes your friendship?" And Ryan had said, after a long silence, "Then I have to find out, because pretending I don't feel this is already losing him, just slower." When he told me that, I had to look out the window for a minute before I could respond. The coming out process, to himself, to his family, to his friends, was Ryan's story to tell, and I'll only share the parts that were mine to witness. His parents were not immediately easy. His dad in particular struggled. There were hard conversations. There were silences that lasted too long. There was one phone call I sat next to him through, not listening, just present, my shoulder against his in the passenger seat of the Jeep, where he said, quietly and evenly, "Dad, I need you to understand that I am still the exact same person I was yesterday. Nothing has changed except that I'm finally telling you the truth." His mom called me 2 days after that conversation. "He talks about you like you're the only stable thing in his life right now," she said. Her voice was tight in the way voices get when someone is choosing their words very carefully. "I'm trying to be," I said. "Be patient with all of us," she said. "We love him, we're just figuring out how to love him right." "I know," I said, "so is he." She exhaled, "Thank you, Ethan, for just thank you." Spring came. Ryan's dad called him. It was a short call. Ryan told me about it later, sitting on the floor of my dorm room with his back against my bed, staring at the ceiling. He said he'd been talking to a pastor at their church. He said he'd done some reading. Ryan shook his head slightly. He said, "I want to be your dad more than I want to be right." Ryan had to stop talking for a minute after that. "Hey," I said. He looked at me. "He's trying," I said. "I know," Ryan said. "It matters, it really matters." I reached down and put my hand on his shoulder. He leaned into it. "We're okay," he asked. "We're okay," I said. And we were. I want to tell you what our life looks like now. Not to prove anything, not to give you a happy ending wrapped in a bow, just because you stayed with me through the hard parts and you deserve to know that the hard parts led somewhere real. We graduated in May. Ryan took the job in Columbus. I got an offer from a digital magazine also in Columbus, not the top of my list when I applied, but as my mom pointed out with barely concealed satisfaction, funny how that worked out. We moved into a 2-bedroom apartment on the west side of the city, 3 blocks from a coffee shop we both like too much and 2 blocks from a park where we walk most mornings. Ryan's plants keep dying in the living room window, and he keeps buying new ones with the optimism of someone who has learned absolutely nothing. I have developed, against my will, strong opinions about throw pillows. We are building something. It is not perfect. Nothing about it is perfect. Ryan is still growing into his understanding of himself, still navigating the complicated territory of identity and what it means to love in a way that's new to you. I am still sometimes the person who overthinks things at 2 a.m. and needs to be told that they're okay. We have hard conversations. We have days where we annoy each other in the specific way that only people who know each other deeply and love each other fiercely can annoy each other. But here is what I can tell you about Ryan Calloway. He still shows up with 2 coffees, mine still has 3 sugars and oat milk. He still sends me memes at 11 p.m. He has started labeling them extremely required reading. He still looks for me in every room. He is still always the person who can make me feel more myself just by being nearby. And some mornings, when I wake up and he is already awake, lying on his side watching nothing in particular out the window, and he hears me move and turns to look at me. There is something in his face in that moment that I will never be able to describe adequately and that I will spend the rest of my life being grateful for. He looks like someone who knows exactly where he is. And so do I. I've been sitting with how to end this story for a while now. Because I don't want to give you a speech. I don't want to hand you a tidy lesson wrapped in a ribbon and send you on your way. That's not what this story is. But I do want to say a few things, and I need you to hear them. The first thing is this. I spent 4 years carrying something alone that I didn't have to carry alone. I made a decision, for reasons that felt deeply sensible at the time, that Ryan could not, would not, should not feel what I felt. I decided for him. I built a wall around my truth and I lived behind it very neatly for 4 years. And that decision, that protective, careful, well-intentioned decision, cost us 4 years. 4 years of late-night drives and gas station coffees and shared silences that could have been different. Not worse, not better necessarily, just different, more honest, more fully ours. I'm not saying this to make you feel bad for me. I'm saying it because I know I am not the only one who has done this. I know there are people watching this right now who are carrying something they've decided is too dangerous to put down, who have made decisions about what's possible, about who could love them and who couldn't, about what they deserve and what they don't. And those decisions are keeping them small and keeping them alone, and keeping them behind walls they built with their own hands. And I want to say to you, the wall you built to protect yourself is also the wall keeping everything good out. The second thing is this. Ryan's story is his own and I won't speak for him. But I will say that watching him step into the truth of who he is, watching him do something that terrified him and do it anyway with honesty and courage and the willingness to sit in discomfort, changed the way I understand bravery. We talk about coming out as if it's a single event, as if it's a door you open once and then you're through it, but it's not. It's a series of doors. Some of them are easy, some of them are the hardest thing you've ever done, and some of them you open and find that the person on the other side was waiting for you, had been waiting for you all along with more love than you were ready to receive. That is what I hope for you, whatever door you've been standing in front of. The third thing is the simplest. Tell people that you love them. Tell them now. Don't wait for a snowstorm or a motel room or a 4 a.m. moment of enforced honesty. Don't wait until you're certain it will be received perfectly. Don't wait until you're not scared. You might be waiting forever. And the person you love is out there, maybe 4 feet away, maybe across town, maybe on the other side of your phone screen right now, carrying the exact same thing you're carrying, wondering if you feel it too, waiting for someone to go first. Go first. Be the one who goes first. It is the bravest, simplest, and most important thing you can do. I know because I didn't. And Ryan did. And it was the best morning of my life. If you're still here, thank you. Thank you for sitting with me through this whole story. This was not an easy one to tell, and I know it was not a simple one to hear. If this resonated with you, if any part of this felt like your story too, I want to hear from you. Drop something in the comments, even just an emoji. Just let me know I wasn't talking to nobody. If you're someone who is carrying something heavy right now, something about who you are, who you love, what you want, I am not going to tell you it's easy. I'm not going to tell you there's a perfect moment coming. I'm going to tell you that the weight doesn't get lighter by holding it tighter, and that there are people in this world, maybe people who are very close to you right now, who are ready to love all of you if you let them. You deserve to let them. Subscribe if you want more stories like this video if it meant something to you, and share it because I believe someone in your life might need to hear this today. I'll see you in the next one.